Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your radio. Hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use, no doubt, starts now. This, my fellow Americans, is the broadcast for March 5th in the year of our Lord 2025. This is hour one of two, and the goal always to protect life, liberty, and property, to promote God, family, and country on your radio and the traditions of our founding fathers, using the checks and balances brilliantly found in the supreme law of the land, the Constitution for the United States of America. That is our guide. As you know, we reject revolution unless it's a Jesus revolution. Then we're in because we follow the Prince of Peace. James Edwards with me, thepoliticalcesspool.org. Welcome back, sir, and what a day it is.
Is that not the truth, Sam? Always great to be back with you, and I love it when the timing lines up as it has right now, just hours after a pretty historic address in the annals of American history.
I want to speak generically first, and then I want to get into the details. So I've got 12 literal points that the Epoch Times had, along with some comments that I have myself. So I want to dig into the details to this speech last night. But I want to talk general terms first. I don't want to get into the specifics yet. I just want, overall, what's your assessment of the speech, James?
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was the best I've ever seen. And this, I go back to, Pat Buchanan, and I had the opportunity to work for the Buchanan campaign in 2000 when he was running for the Reform Party. He was the Reform Party nominee running for president, and I got to see him speak a lot of times, and he is a brilliant orator, but I would put this speech, what I saw last night, up against, it would at least belong in the ring with Buchanan's 1992 Culture War speech. It's the best I've ever seen from a president, and that's by far, but one of the best speeches I've ever seen by any politician of any stripe.
I agree with that 100%. Although he tried to suggest he was the best president in the world's history for the United States, and that George Washington took a distant second to the Trumpster. I completely disagree with that notion. He did say that. However, I do think it was one of the best speeches I've heard in my lifetime from any politician, for that matter. And we'll get into the reasons why in just a minute. But a couple of other headlines that are worthy of kind of encapsulating what happened. Headline from The Blaze. Democratic lawmakers booed Trump's speech, but the American people loved it. Joseph MacKinnon, The Blaze. So think about it. Doesn't that really encapsulate the whole speech, though? Democratic lawmakers booed Trump, but the American people love it. I mean, that really tells the tale, doesn't it?
I can add on to that, Sam. I will take that excerpt that you read and raise you this from the Telegraph. I mean, this is a rollicking opening couple of paragraphs. Listen to what the Telegraph writes. By no means Trump MAGA adjacent media. The Telegraph, the headline, Trump reigns supreme. His enemies no longer matter. And listen to how they describe the speech. Fantastic, shameless, 5-star entertainment. Tuesday night's address to Congress was the apotheosis of Trump the TV host, Trump the people's friend. What other president would induct a kid with brain cancer into the Secret Service or tell a young man he'd won a place at West Point? And when Elizabeth Warren gave an extra long hand clap for Ukraine, he called her Pocahontas and brought the house down. Folks, this wasn't politics. It was watching Sinatra play Vegas. Two messages stood out. Number one, the Democrats no longer matter, and neither does Europe. The party of opposition wore pink to show solidarity, gender stereotyping, and held up little paddles that read false or that's a lie. They looked like they were bidding on meds in a retirement home. They're old. They're cranky. They even booed Trump saying he won the election, which is one of the few things he uttered that was indisputable. And then he gets into the congressman who was removed by the sergeant of arms.
Yeah, so Mr. Green of Texas got up. Basically, he started yelling at the president, stood up. Eventually, Mike tried to gavel back into order. They wouldn't listen. He eventually had to have ejected, is what you'd call the opposition, right?
Yeah, he was thrown out.
And everybody else quieted down because they didn't want to get ejected also, right?
So that was within the first,
That's
5
how you get
minutes?
a T in Congress, James.
That was the first 5 minutes, technical foul, the first 5 minutes of that. But I really have to agree. It was political theater in a way. I mean, he's a showman. I'm not saying it's political theater in that he was insincere. He made it showman-like. But what he was talking about was very serious and things that he has either already done or things that he does intend to do. So it was very serious on that matter, but he did make it entertainment. I love the line. It was like watching Sinatra play Vegas and the Democrats. I mean, I watched the whole thing. I watched it from about 15 minutes, while people were still coming in before they announced his arrival, all the way through the senator in Michigan who gave the Democratic response. I mean, I was there before it started all the way through and for about 45 minutes after, and I took notes in a chronological order, start to finish. I mean,
we're going to get into those notes 2 hours detail, on this. But I just wanted the summary to kind of reign supreme first, because that summary really encapsulates all of it and stands on its own. Now, we can pick out different points that were made and different details. Now, this is interesting. Here's the next headline that I have. Trump paints optimistic picture of America's golden age during historic congressional address. The Blaze also with that piece. So you kind of look at this and you go, this is interesting, really, how this is turning out. Those headlines are interesting. And I agree it was an optimistic picture. However, I think for the most part, believe it or not, and this is weird for me to say, but again, I'm a guy acquainted with the truth. I don't pick sides, as everybody knows. I would say that it was mostly truthful speech. Assertions like, hey, George Washington's kind of a distant second to me or whatever else. And okay, set that aside, because you're going to, do a little bluster, a little entertainment, a little bit of push the envelope for your own. It's like a resume. You're putting your best foot forward in your first address this election cycle, if you will, or this, 47 versus 45 presidential, whatever. But for the most part, I think everything he said was true. There wasn't a big old, we're going to give handouts everywhere. There was not that. There's a couple of things that I went, But for the most part, it wasn't a socialism agenda-driven speech either. So I think he hit it on all fronts, really, minus a couple of quick tidbits, which I found interesting. It was a 100-minute speech about 6 weeks after he took the Oval Office. Is that where we're at?
The longest. It was, I believe, it exactly clocked in at 1 hour and 40 minutes, which was reported to be the longest State of the Union address in American history by far. But I'll tell you this, I watched the whole thing, Sam, and I got to say this, it went by very quickly because it was just that good.
It went by very quickly. It was that good, but to me, some of it was a little bit boring. Okay, because it was just, promotion of the Donald for things that aren't really complete in many ways. Now, I get that you got to keep the momentum going. I support that. I get that you want to keep the Democrats, backpedaling. I support all that. Except I don't like the Republican-Democrat divide that goes on constantly. Okay, the March 4th address talked about as more than 100 executive orders, over 500 or whatever, 400 executive actions, nearly every aspect of government, nearly every U.S. relationship involved. Anyway, it began with a statement, America's back, and it ended with a call to remove the promise of the American dream being broken. It's here. It's the golden age. And that's the question. Do you support the golden age, James? Are we in a golden age?
Yeah, they are comparing him to the Gilded Age. And these are people that, of course, Trump looked up to, these titans of industries, these people who, quite literally built America, took it, to the next generation in terms of advancement and infrastructure and all of the things, a lot of the things he's talking about doing, that Gilded Age in the late 1800s, early 1900s, before World War I, before the stock market crashed. That's what they're talking about. And Trump does fancy that era in American history. He's mentioned it many times himself, and I think he wants to bring back a second Gilded Age.
And let me stop you there, though, and say, who in their right mind doesn't review that era and hope for the future to be the same? I mean, how do you disagree with that, James?
Well, that's certainly, that's the age-old question of nationalism versus globalism. And, you talk about this divide between the Republicans and Democrats. This was another thing that the establishment media pointed out, but I noticed it. This was very much a partisan speech. It was not one that talked about bridging the divide. Even if that's just lip service that presidents do at State of the Union addresses, coming together. He didn't do that almost at all, at all. And
no, the way he did it, I was impressed with. And here's the way he did it that I was impressed with. Rather than saying Republicans are right, Democrats are wrong, and fomenting the divide, he merely said this is the direction we're going. The people want lower taxes. The people want to get rid of the waste in government. Everybody wants this. You group down here now, just because they happen to be Democrats, that's irrelevant. You need to get aboard. You need to become part of the solution that the American people want. And I really appreciate that he did his best. I know some would say, well, it was a really partisan divide speech. I don't think so. It was you're on the wrong side of the American people speech.
He did mention, I'm trying to help you here by telling you how you should vote when some of these things come up.
Right.
And that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, maybe.
Because it's the right way to go, though, for the country. That's what the American people want, though.
But you look at them, and I'll tell you this is different. I felt that way in the early days. I mean, the early days, we're 44 days into this administration, and I will say this at this point: I'm 44 years old. He's done more good in 44 days than has been done in the last 44 years, and it's not even close. But this thing with the Democrats it is different this time. This is a different Trump. I felt that way after the first couple of weeks. Now we're a month and a half in, and it's just really solidified and crystallized. This is not 2017 Trump. This is different, and the Democrats have themselves to blame, or perhaps rather we have them to thank. If they left him alone and let him properly win in 2020, this is something they got to consider. They would have gotten 4 more years of unfocused and incoherent action, but by putting him through what they did, they created the Trump we see now. I really believe that.
But they also created the people that we see now, too, that are so much more, their eyes are open, they're educated, they're understanding. That's changed, too, James, to a great degree. We got to be clear about that.
That is absolutely right. There was so much, and again, I use this in a positive term, not in like a violent or lawless term, but there was so much radicalization of the Republican base through the George Floyd, everything that went on in the last year of Trump's first administration, 2020, COVID, George Floyd, just all, and then this crazy. I loved the things that he said about transgenderism. That you are perfect just the way God made you. You're not trapped in the wrong body. I mean, there were times where I pumped my fist. I laughed out loud at some of his remarks throughout the night as well. I don't think he could have done any better. But, I mean, all of that stuff that the Democrats, as you were just saying, they put the people through all of that, and this is the natural reaction to that. I mean, you wonder why didn't it happen before now? I mean, our issues are no more right or correct today than they've ever been, but, the timing is right now. And
because Trump has the mojo, the star-studded power, whatever you want to call it, fame power, along with money, along with a big piece of the media with Elon Musk and Truth Social. You put those together, and then you put a few people around them, like Jeff Bezos and others that are kind of coming to their senses. And they really frame the argument in a way that it's like, hey, and Trump made this point, and I'm going to highlight it. Free speech is back. Now, I don't think that's a total statement, but I think it's a great, great start statement. It's totally different now than it was. Look at Caroline Leavitt to make the point. And so things have changed. Now, you still don't have your Twitter account back, though, right?
No, I'm guessing somebody buried that so far underneath the Twitter slab there that even Musk hasn't seen.
The only way to get it back would be to start a new account, probably.
I know, but and I can't. A lot of people who were banned with me on that day have done that, and
I have. I got mine banned, but I've got mine back.
Yeah. So I mean, I hate you build something up and.
Oh, there's no question.
Starting from zero.
And really, if there was a way to get to Elon and Donald and say, guys, we need to have this account restored, and maybe it could get done. Yeah. How we could get to that to get it done is the problem, right? But I generally agree with the optimistic picture of the United States. I think things are a lot better off. And, I can point out problems with the speech. I gave you one of them, suggesting that you're a better president than George Washington. Okay, come on. The other problem that I have is, he brought out a lot of different individuals and gave them a lot of credit and thanking people and everything else. And that's fine. But I would kind of step back a little bit and say, hey, on the whole, I want concrete, real solutions. And I'll give you an example. We talked a lot about, hey, we're going to crank up these tariffs. It's good. Got to do it. He didn't say any word about abolishing the IRS, though. So there are some things that I just kind of feel like, how serious is he really about that? We're literally barreling towards tax day, James. So you know what? If you're going to abolish the IRS, get it done. Let's go.
Well, I mean, again, there's a lot to do, and you do what you can as quickly as you can. It's hard to do it all at once, but that
but you're better off
this.
reducing taxes on the American people before you pile tariffs on business on top of the taxes.
Well, he
we'll
likes
end up with both if we're not careful.
He likes to compare himself to historic presidents. If he does abolish the IRS, he's gonna free a lot more slaves than Lincoln ever did, and that's not even going to be close. So he will have ended the slavery of the American people to the IRS, which of course didn't exist even barely. Income tax has only been around for about a little over 100 years. He knows that. I'm not so sure that that's not going to happen. I tell you, the IRS has already sent out statements saying, reminding people that they need to pay their taxes, because I think a lot of people are saying, hey, if it's going anyway, I'll just get out in front of this thing and just stop, because what's it going to matter?
And that's why Trump needs to deliver on that and then work on tariffs.
Well, okay,
so
then
you've got discounts to the American people at the start. Right now, I'm saddled with both, James.
Well, I mean, the tariffs are just now, I think, going into effect. Some haven't even gone into effect yet, and I don't know when you start reaping the
man,
rewards.
We've been paying them for more than a month, buddy.
Well, I mean, some others are going to affect, I think, in a month, and some may have already started, and they're adjusting, the percentages and things like that. But
I'm the guy that has to work as an IT guy to try to deal with all those changes for companies, right?
I remember you talking to me about that. But and I don't know exactly when you start reaping the benefits. If those countries are cutting you a check and when that gets deposited and how that exactly works. But I will say, speaking of one,
no. When we import products to the United States, we got to pay the bill to the customs people.
All right, so there you go. So maybe the money's already starting to roll in, but I think there's going to be more.
For sure.
He brought that up.
How do I know? I'm watching companies write checks. I know for sure.
It's a fair thing, very fair.
Oh, it is a fair thing.
If they're going to put this much on us, we'll put that much on them. I mean, that's reciprocal.
Yes,
he used the word reciprocal.
100%. But to put that on top of what we're already paying, Americans are already brought to the brink, and you're going to have to cut somewhere else. If you want to create a net neutral reality and say, we're going to add these tariffs, we're going to get rid of this income tax, great. So far, we've done one and not the other, though, is the problem.
That would be a yin and a yang. You add this and you give relief here. I see what you're saying. Of course, now, again, it's been 44 days and you can't do it all in a month, but that would be something I would like to see happen sooner rather than later. I don't know exactly what the immediate repercussions of that would be and how that sorts itself out. But, of course, if that agency can be created – and not created at the founding of this country. This was something that came much later. It can certainly be dismantled. But I will say this about the Department of Education. So this was just happened this week. Just this week, of course, Linda McMahon, and how beautiful is that? The co-founder of WWE. Or WWF, whatever they called it, Vince McMahon's ex-wife. She's the head of the Department of Education, and he said that he sent her in there with one mandate.
Right? Fake wrestling.
Well, but she was one of the heels in that. I mean, she actually acted in some of those stunts and was a big on-air player in that
sure.
Back in the 90s and in the 2000s. But he said, "Yeah, I give you your job. You have one job. Put yourself out of a job." He goes, "I want you to dismantle the Department of Education." So she's going in there with the mandate. This is the director of the Department of Education, and her job is to shut it down. So I think he's serious. And
I think
that
he's
back
serious,
to the states.
but I got a question. Why even get a person in there then? Why not just shut it down? You don't need to hire an employee. Just shut it down.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. Now, not everything he said he's going to do, he will do. I mean, we know that. That's true of any politician.
Because he's only one man, and this is the reason. I'm not bringing this up to attack Trump. I'm bringing this up to say, where is Congress? The Republicans are sitting around applauding the Donald. The Democrats are rioting. You got this massive divide. Mike Johnson, in my opinion, is like a clown. And I don't really see Congress codifying what President Trump is doing. And if Congress would start to codify the things that Trump is doing, it would be unstoppable changes. And that's what I really want to see here, right?
It would be. And you've got, I mean, again, we're not even 2 months into a 4-year term.
Well, no, you don't have a 4-year term, James. You got a year or less.
Well, you're talking about
or you will absolutely lose 26.
You've got that
or 20, 26 elections.
You've got that political capital. Yeah, you are right. You got more political capital when you first come in than you do. But I will say this: if he keeps going on at this pace, I mean, did you see the Democrats yesterday? I mean, did you see they look like they are not even players? As a matter of fact, they have been on their heels because they have been overwhelmed with so many things hitting them at once and at all times. They can barely even mount a resistance or even keep up with all of it. I mean, they look like they're not even on the playing field right now.
You've got a couple of clown judges around the country that are stopping Donald Trump at almost every turn in many ways. And that's really the problem that we face. And see, this is where if Congress codified it, the courts would be shut down over it.
It's astonishing, Sam, that we are 5 months removed from Election Day. And I cannot tell you, and I'd be interested to know if you can tell me, what the Democratic plan is, what their plan is, what their response is. I mean, I did hear this.
I'll tell you the plan right now. The plan is to tie everything Donald does up in courts. The plan is to stop enough of the agenda from going through, let Donald run rampant with executive orders. They can all be overturned, so they temporarily mean something, but virtually in the long haul they mean nothing. And bog Congress down to the point where they can't get the job done and then make a mockery of. So, for example, you got the debt ceiling coming up. It wasn't even mentioned last night, was it?
I don't know if the word debt ceiling. I mean, they talked about balancing.
Yeah, no, but debt ceiling is a term. And it's something that Trump wanted to get rid of entirely. The Republicans didn't even give it to him. Most people are saying we should not raise the debt ceiling. But it's coming up in, 10 days?
You're talking about having to refund the government.
Yeah. And so the debt ceiling comes to mind. They wanted a big, beautiful bill. Mike Johnson put that together. It's already got a huge one in the Senate and a huge one in the House, but they're completely different. Funding bills must originate in the House if they're constitutional. And I look at that and I go, so my whole point isn't to attack Trump on this. My whole point is to say Congress has got to start to double down and stick together. And they've got to start to set aside this partisan politics and say, hey, what's good for the country? And we have got to codify a lot of what Trump's done. Trump's done right. But we have got to back him as the American people and push our members of Congress to back him. And we've got to highlight this for the next year, James, year and a half. Till the elections come, to show what we've done to back Trump's play. And if Congress does not get that done, they will lose. Even Newt Gingrich said, hey, you guys have till July 4th to have serious tax reform. If you don't, it's going to be curtains.
Well, you've
got to get it done.
They're still sitting members of his cabinet. I mean, McMahon was just sworn in a couple of days ago. So, I mean, this is all still developing. And I think Congress will. I do think Congress will get to some of these things because I'll tell you, congressmen, Supreme Court judges, senators, they're just people like me and you, and they are just as susceptible, perhaps even more so, frankly, than people like me and you who have always been principled. And whether it's lean years or fat years, we've stuck to our guns and stuck to our issues. These people, though, are perhaps even more susceptible to being swept up by the current momentum. And there is so much momentum behind Trump. I mean, look at the Republican Party. So much different than 2017. He has whipped the Republican Party to his heel. They are entirely at his command. All of these Republican
But I believe there's a lot of Republicans undermining President Trump. They feign support, but they undermine him at every turn. Mike Johnson, I believe, to be one of them. Proof in the pudding, Mike Johnson said, hey, let's go ahead and just fund the current spending bill now. And let's talk about Doge savings later. That's a Mike Johnson quote. It ain't going to work that way, people. You do that and you'll waste time. Even Newt Gingrich says if we don't see serious tax cuts by July the 4th, I'm telling you right now, it'll be a recession and Republicans will pay in 26. I think Newt's right about that reality. I'm not a Newt fan, but I think he is pointing out a truism. When we get back, we'll dig into the details. I've got 12 points. James has others. We're going from our notes and we're going from our our view of what happened last night. Trump rock and rolled. Hey, the Democrat lawmakers hated it, but the people, we the people, loved it. On that note, more in seconds on your radio.
How would you like to help this program reach more people and earn silver at the same time? Call or text 801-669-2211 for complete details.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. When it comes to finally ending the war in Ukraine...
Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful?
President Trump in last night's speech to a joint session of Congress saying that both sides now indicate they are ready for peace talks. It was a wide-ranging speech, Mr. Trump proclaiming America is back. The president defends his imposition of tariffs on China, Canada, and Mexico.
Tariffs are not just about protecting American jobs. They're about protecting the soul of our country.
Mr. Trump says reciprocal tariffs will take effect April 2nd. In his words, whatever they tariff us, we will tariff them. And he says all it took to fix the border crisis was a new president, one who's willing to enforce the law. The Democrat response delivered by Michigan Senator Alyssa Slotkin.
We just went through another fraught election season. Americans made it clear that prices are too high and that the government needs to be more responsive to their needs.
Democrat heckling throughout the president's speech. One disruptive lawmaker standing up, shaking a walking stick and screaming, having to be removed from the chamber by the sergeant at arms. Powerful storms have killed 2 people in Mississippi, ripping the roofs off an apartment building and a nursing home in Oklahoma, and threatening communities across the Deep South and parts of the Midwest. All of that wicked weather now moving to the east. China planning a major boost in its military budget, a 7.2% increase this year. That would match last year's increase. Tensions running especially high between China and the U.S., as well as between China and Japan and Taiwan. On Wall Street, stocks are higher at the moment. The Dow is up 230 points. The Nasdaq ahead 52, and the S&P trading 19 points higher. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Just hearing the word IRS can make people break out in a cold sweat. No one wants to deal with the IRS, and now you don't have to. The good news is Legal Tax Defense has been successfully negotiating with the IRS for more than 15 years. It doesn't matter how much you owe, whether it's $5,000 or $5 million. You deserve the best in the business on your side, and that is Legal Tax Defense. Even if you're working with someone else and just want a second opinion, there is no cost or obligation to call. They can prevent levies, liens, wage garnishments, even file back tax returns. And the best news about Legal Tax Defense is they won't take your case unless they know they will reduce or eliminate your tax debt. Call Legal Tax Defense right now for a free, no-risk consultation. 800-292-7875. 800-292-7875. You have nothing to lose but everything to gain. 800-292-7875.
Have you ever had great honey? No, I mean really good, all-natural, raw honey? Well, now you can, thanks to localhoneyman.com. We can ship out our locally made honey all across the U.S. So don't worry, you won't miss out. Plus, Local Honeyman has so many different flavors, like Utah Wildflower, High Desert Delight, Happy Valley, and Blackberry, just to name a few. So purchase your delicious raw honey today at localhoneyman.com.
Do you treasure your liberty? Well, at lovingliberty.net, we most certainly do. And we want to help protect your liberty too. Become part of the family. Everyone knows that the core of any society is the family. Therefore, the government should foster and protect the integrity of its family, we the people. Won't you join us as a Loving Liberty sponsor to help us promote the principles in the 5,000-year leap? Let's restore the miracle that changed the world at lovingliberty.net.
Imagine a school where faith and integrity are at its center, where heritage and responsibility instill character, where educating both hearts and minds brings about academic excellence. There is a school in American Fork where character and embracing the providence of a living God are fundamental, where students' national test scores average near the 90th percentile. Based on LDS principles and a love of country, now in our 39th year, American Heritage School is accepting fall enrollment for kindergarten through high school. What would you do for your child? Give them an education that will prepare them for life. Located east of the temple in American Fork, American Heritage School is a remarkable and affordable alternative. Visit us, find us online, or in the Yellow Pages. American Heritage School in American Fork.
Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right, back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. Sam Bushman, James Edwards breaking down Donald Trump's address. Why don't they call it a State of the Union? That's usually in year 2, 3, 4. In the first one, though, it's just kind of an address to Congress saying, hey, here's the change, here's what we're going to do. Democratic lawmakers hated it, booed Trump. One of them got literally a T and got kicked out. And the American people love it, is the bottom line. And I love it. James loves it. A lot of good was done by President Trump. It was an incredible performance. It was part of entertainment. We laughed. We cried. We even turned to God Almighty. And that's really one of the biggest differences. I want to talk about 12 takeaways from Trump's first major policy speech to Congress. The Epoch Times is the one that has this 12-point list, and I basically took my notes, and then when I saw their 12-point list, I kind of just merged my notes into their 12 points because my issues were the same as theirs. The first one is this tax cut issue, James, for all Americans, and I really like that. I support that. I agree with that. Trump pledged across-the-board tax cuts, including personal income, corporate, and industry cuts. After the Republican 2017 bill was not permanent, he says this time he's pushing lawmakers to make it permanent. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm backing Trump and saying, Congress, get it done yesterday. In fact, it would have been incredible if you would have made the tax cuts permanent right before his speech. Then he could really have said something, right? Trump reiterated his campaign proposals to end taxes on tips, overtime pay, and Social Security benefits. And then he also said he wanted to be... to not tax interest on vehicle purchases. He says, I'm sure you're going to vote for those tax cuts because otherwise I don't believe the people will ever vote you back into office, he mocked the Democrats and said. He added to these tax cuts, which would total $4.5 trillion over a decade, would be retroactive to January 1st, 2025. So a great start, in my opinion. What he's calling for is what I'm saying, James. We got to push Congress. The American people better take the cue from the president and push Congress. You need to be calling your representatives and senators and every day and going, hey, man, are you guys on the tax cut plan? When do we see it? What's going on? Are you aboard? How do we? And we've got to really, this is where, what if you had 10 million people start to push and say, we support Trump in the tax cuts? When are we getting it done? I'm telling you right now, it'll become the top issue in the nation, James.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We were talking about this during the break. I think you've seen in the first 44 days, decades worth of advancement now. I think your point is that a lot of this could be just as quickly overturned by a hypothetical future Democratic president. But, I mean, right now, things change.
But hold on. When we say a hypothetical future Democratic president, a certain future Democratic president, right?
I'm not sure about that. I don't know about that.
Do you think there'll never be another Democratic president in the history of our nation?
Well, I mean, you look at the change that has happened that we're seeing right now compared to where we were, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I mean, during the depths of the horrible George W. Bush neoconservative. I mean, there was nothing like this even coming up the pipeline, much less in the White House. And so, I mean, things can certainly change in politics. History proves that. Things can change dramatically. But I think that there is a possibility. I mean, depending on how the Democrats react to all this and what Trump is, of course, it all has to fall into place. Trump has to continue to build upon these early successes and continue to deliver. And
he only can only make them lasting if Congress gets aboard. And right now, they're simply not.
Well, I mean, this is what we were talking about during the break. I'm not trying to be a contrarian here, but it has only been a month and a half. If we're still saying
been over
this,
2 months since those clowns have been in office. Half the days they've taken off, the other half they show up at noon.
I mean, when did the new Congress get seated?
January 4th.
All right, so it's been exactly 2 months. A month and a half for Trump. But but I mean, they're not going to do much before the president comes in anyway. But nevertheless, if we're still having this conversation,
I think they had to have 50 single issue bills on the table that are vote up, vote down, and they had to mock those people who vote against those common sense constitutional bills, and mock them, saying you guys are going to shut down government because you're clowns. And I think they could have had 50 bills on his desk ready to go.
That's exactly, by the way, and you should probably get him back on. I was saying this. a moment ago during the break, you should probably get him back on as quickly as you can. I can remember right after Trump was elected, talking to Steve Stockman, Congressman Stockman, and him saying this was in November. And he said, this is exactly what the Republicans should be doing between now and January 20th. They get it all ready, and then it's ready for him to sign. No, they didn't. But, here, look, all I can say is if we're still having this conversation in mid to late summer, then we've got a bigger problem. I still think that there's time to do that. I mean, his cabinet is still literally getting seated, things like that. McMahon was just in a couple of days ago, but I do see that there's a lot of different ways things could go in politics. I mean, history is volatile and it changes, and it sometimes changes rapidly and violently. But there is a path that exists where if the Democrats hang on to wokeism and transgenderism and Black Lives Matter and all the things that made them that brought Trump this current administration into power, if they don't physician heal thyself, if they don't do a little introspective assessing, there is a future that exists where the Democrats become a regional party on the coasts and the Republicans are just America's basically a one-party state. There is a path that leads in that direction. Is that going to be where we go? We'll see.
How viable it is, I don't know. Let me give you an example to make the point. I don't know if you know this, but Donald Trump last night said 21 million people were brought into the country under Biden's watch. Now, here's the point. If those people vote Democrat, it's curtains.
Well, if they're allowed to vote, I mean,
we're not well, they can vote. No one can stop them. We don't have the policies in place to really stop them from voting. And here's the point. Come 2030, we have another census, right? And if we're not very careful, a significant number of those 21 million people will be in the census and will absolutely give seats to blue states, take seats from red states, and give seats to the Democrats. Literally wholesale. It's like the ticking time bomb put in place. And unless Tom Holman and crew can reduce the amount of illegal aliens in the country fast enough, it will be something to deal with. So Trump talked about the border being closed, deportations underway. Trump touted his administration's efforts to secure the border, halting the flow of illegal aliens, and the list goes on and on. He says, within hours of taking the Oval Office, I declared a national emergency on our southern border. By the way, he's right to do so. Trump says that his rhetoric also helped encourage what would be illegal immigrants not even to come to the United States. He said they heard my words. They chose not to come. It's not a place for you. The president also highlighted his designating these cartels and transnational gangs as foreign terrorist organizations. Now, that's huge. I support it 100%, but I've dug into the numbers, and I'm telling you right now, we're not deporting people even close to fast enough, James. Not even close.
Well, they've talked about ICE being gutted during the Biden years and getting more agents there, and we'll see. But I will say this. You read some different stories that have different numbers. I don't know what the exact number is that is accurate, but you're certainly getting more deported than you would have under Biden. That's number one. And do you believe, though, Sam, that border crossings are down 94% to the lowest levels in history?
Yes.
Because if that's true,
true,
that's cutting off the parade of Democratic voters that you were concerned about a moment ago.
No, because they're already here.
All right, well, they're not going to be growing in number, and if they are here...
So think about it this way, James, really quick. If you brought in 21 million illegals under Biden, it's like 7 million... it's like 5 million illegals a year, to make it simple. So how many do you got to deport a day to get that done? This is very simple stuff, if you want my opinion. Just to get to zero before Biden started, and our border's been leaking like a sieve for years, even before that, right? So we've been bringing in illegals for decades, since Reagan did amnesty, shame, the first time, right? But if you do 5 million divided by 365, so you got to deport people on Christmas, you got to deport people on Thanksgiving, you have to do 13,000 a day, buddy.
Well, when was the last
just to get 5 million in a year?
We can make sense of this future projections. When was the last census You said the next one's coming
2020.
up in
They're every 10 years, my friend.
All right, so then I don't think we got a problem. I don't. A lot of these people are going to self-deport too, and a lot of them are. So even if you have a net gain in 2030 compared to 2020, and I'm not so sure. I mean, number one, their numbers are only going to dwindle if the border has already been virtually sealed off. Even if you're getting scant deportations compared to what you could be doing, although now Trump did bring that up last night. He brought up Eisenhower, calling Eisenhower's Operation Wetback a moderate proposal compared to what he's going to be doing, and that they are going to be doing more. And you haven't seen nothing yet. He did mention that. I mean, he addressed that head on. So we'll see. But even if you just take a few away a day, you're not allowing any more in. A greater number are self-deporting, and they are. I mean, there's been a lot of stories about that. I will tell you, these people aren't going to be voting in red states in 2030, no matter what the census says. They're not going to be voting in Tennessee. They might be voting in California. But I'll tell you this: I have told you this before, and I think we've mentioned it on a previous Liberty Roundtable appearance. This future that could lead to the Democrats becoming a regional party. I look forward to the next census. I anticipate the next census because I think one thing you are going to see, again, as a result, we have the Democrats to thank for this. As a result of their outrageous anti-white, anti-Christian, anti-American woke actions, children, all of this stuff through COVID and beyond. But these last 5 years, you've seen a great exodus of conservatives who were really just wasting their votes in places like California and Oregon. I mean, by the hundreds of thousands, you have seen conservatives in blue states moving to Texas and the South and places like that. And those states will have more electoral power in 2030. It'll be the 2032 election, I guess. So I think you're going to see actually more red electoral votes in 2032 than you do now, because these states that are going to go red are going to have more voting power. And the populations, I think, of places like California are going to continue to decline. They're going to lose electoral votes. And
I sure pray you're right. I'm just telling you right now, man, when you bring in 21 million people, unless you deport them as fast as you brought them in, they will sway towards blue, towards whatever. And many of these people will vote, will be in the census. Vote. Because even if they don't vote, they're still in the census, which grants congressmen and senators, whether you vote or not, right?
Well, that's
like
something to consider.
The census isn't based on voter rolls. It's based on the census. And we come back and say, hey, let me give you an example. How many people are in the state of Utah? Well, last time it was this number. This time it's this number. Therefore, you guys get another House representative, for instance, or whatever the case may be. It's going to be that kind of stuff. And voting is a secondary concern.
Well, I'll tell you this then. They're going to help the Republicans because unless they live in California, which might be one of the states that are going to let you vote without any sort of ID. They're not going to be voting in Texas. They're not going to be voting in Florida. If they live illegally in places like Texas or Florida or Tennessee or Alabama.
You're right now, I see that they're voting in mass droves. I'll tell you that right now.
I don't see them voting.
Any
in
other
the red
tax
states.
or border questions or notes from you, James, on that?
I'd love to see the IRS dismantled. We talked about that. I think the border overall is going in the right direction. Again,
Amen.
I don't want to say it's only been 44 days, and the next time I'm on, it's only been 60 days, and the next time I'm on,
it is going in the right direction.
Days.
It is going in the right direction. And for me to bring this up isn't to naysay. It's to say I love Tom Homan, I love Trump, and I think they're on the right track, and we better get the American people in Congress to back their play, or I'm telling you, it'll be a nothing burger. We've got to do this.
Well, that's right. Yeah, I mean, if you don't capitalize,
have got to engage. This is not a spectator sport, people. And I've been pushing on this, and what I get is pushback. And the pushback to me tells me that Republicans are already complacent.
Well, I mean,
going,
you've got the momentum.
Let's give it some time. I'll go to Hawaii and come back next year, and you guys will have it all solved. And it isn't going to happen, people, unless you get involved.
You have got momentum, and you've got a mandate from the American people. So you got to act on it. You got to act on it quick. I mean, certainly Trump can't sign any more executive orders fast enough. It does come down to Congress.
And I'm not downing Trump over this, right? I'm not downing him at all. I'm just telling you, we better back his play. We've got to get that done.
I'm optimistic about that. We'll see.
All right.
Nothing more we can do.
Any other notes on taxes or the border?
Not taxes or the border, just a hodgepodge, really, of
I understand.
things.
So here's the next one I've got. See if you got notes on this. Trump touts common sense revolution. He announced what he called the common sense revolution. including, hey, getting rid of federally funded programs, decreasing expenditures. He referenced an executive order signed early in his second term, declaring that the federal government recognizes only two sexes, male and female. There's only two genders, he said. And he's stripping federal funding to any schools that allow males to be in female sports. One order says, hey, you know what? You can't go into men's bathrooms. That's going to stop. He referenced merit-based hiring rather than hiring to meet diversity quotas. He said, we are under the common sense revolution. I happen to agree with that 100%.
That was a big, that was a thread and a common denominator, a thread that tied his entire speech together. And then, look at the Democrats. Again, they didn't clap one time for anything. He mentioned Ukraine, and a couple of them clapped sarcastically. Schumer had his head down as Trump passed. Body language is important. And, they couldn't even clap at what was truly a touching moment where – Trump is recognizing some of the people in the gallery, and you've got this young boy who had survived brain cancer, and he swore him in as a member of the Secret Service and things like that. And
that was actually incredible.
This kid gives a big bear hug to this Secret Service agent, and the Democrats are just sitting there, frowning and scowling. How could you not clap for something like that just because you're so anti-Trump?
Because they're so hate-filled and so full of vile and hate, and they just can't bring themselves to do it, James.
And he's talking about swift and unrelenting action, which is certainly what he's taken through what he can do with these executive orders. As I said, he said more in 43 days than in 8 years. I would say more in 43 days than in 43 years. William S. Lynn, a conservative political theorist, calls it the political equivalent of the German Blitzkrieg. And then the Democrats just really look like freaks. They look like the bar scene. Their side of the aisle look like the bar scene in Star Wars compared to like the All-American Republican.
I'm telling you right now, they just look flat out evil.
Freaky costumes and like these, tribal garb, and very weird. Trump talks about, talking about the common sense, talks about the tyranny. I love whoever is writing his speech needs a raise. The tyranny.
Amen. I agree with that totally.
The tyranny of diversity, the poison of critical race theory. He used these terms. We are woke no longer. As you said, only two genders. He talked about there only being two genders. You're perfect the way God made you. And the Democrats just scowling over something so wholesome. What a wholesome message. No men in women's sports. How could you not be for that? And let's see. I laughed out loud. I laughed out loud, Sam, several times throughout the speech, but a couple of times specifically when he was reading out the list of Doge cuts. This goes back into the Sinatra playing Vegas thing. It's serious, but it's also entertaining. It's funny. And if you can win the people over with, a little bit of comedic release, it's good. He talks about these scams being terminated, talking about, one guy being 300 years old on Social Security. I think that might have been hyperbole, but I don't know. Hey, another great joke there.
No. I don't think it's hyperbole. I think that the computers have people have fat-fingered dates and different things, and they don't have good traps to prevent a lot of this stuff. He talked about literally, 4 million, 3 million. I was counting when he was doing that. It was over 10, 12, 15 million people that should not even be on Social Security at all.
Well, and then some of these people being 160 years old, great. And again, this is how you relate to the American people. You earn rapport and trust from the American people. Talking about 160-year-old people being on Social Security, and he says, well, I don't know, Bobby, talking to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., we may be a healthier country than I thought. That's hilarious. That's just funny, and it makes him relatable. Talking about the rule. Yeah.
Without question. I agree.
100%.
Oh,
I thought you said I had a question. Yeah, okay, I thought you said I had a question.
Without question, I'm agreeing.
Talking about the days of rule by unelected bureaucrats being over, referring to illegal alien murderers as monsters and savages. This is again.
And then he had people in the gallery. He had people in the gallery to highlight those points in very meaningful, productive, down to the family level reality, right?
Well, you got to do that. You got to do that. You got to put. It is important in politics to put names and faces to issues, and it's terrible for these people because they lost family members due to being murdered by people who should have never been here. And he uses the adjectives monsters and savages, exclusively in the context of violent crime. But this is pure Buchananism. And it's important to have those people. Again, he referred to Operation Wetback as a moderate proposal, referred to the left. I loved this, Sam. I mean, this to me was powerful. It refers to radical left lunatics and pointed at the Democrats and with his finger moved in a semicircle motion, calling them all out as radical left lunatics. That's powerful. Talking about, no kids are trapped in the wrong bodies. We've talked about that. A big lie. Perfect the way God made you. I went from when I first started in radio, 21 years ago, 25. I've been in this a quarter of a century, going back to the Buchanan campaign. In the year 2000, there was no discernible difference between the two parties, and now there are worlds of differences. And he talked about being saved by God in Pennsylvania. And
now, hold on, let me stop you there too. Do you believe? So Trump said I was basically preserved to make America great again. Do you believe that? Do you agree with that?
I can tell you with the certainty that I believe that he believes that, and yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, you're talking about a millimeter, a fraction of a millimeter from his head being blown off to where he is today. I as a Christian, as a Bible-believing, Christ-believing Christian, I
believe it 100%, James, and I'll tell you why. That near miss was critical for sure, but they've been trying to kill Donald for 8 years now.
Well, kill him politically, kill him legally, kill him,
put him in prison, everything. They've done everything they possibly can to him. And so I do believe that God has put Trump in his place. Is Trump perfect? No, but God's proven, biblically speaking, that he can work with, all of us that are not perfect. And he can make a difference, and he can change someone that has no grace, has no value, to somebody who does. And I think when somebody takes the mantle of the U.S. president on their shoulders, it changes people. And I truly believe that Donald's, whether, some say he's gone Jewish, some say he's a Christian, I don't know. But I know this. I'm not interested in a litmus test about religion or whatever else. I am interested in, I believe his appeal to and focus on and willingness to express that we are one nation under God and that we need to look to God for our salvation and our protection. Donald Trump says those things, and I believe in my heart that he's sincere. I really do.
And I believe that God saved him. I mean, obviously he did, but he had the gentleman there who died, who got the bullet that was intended for him. He had his family there in the gallery. That was another one that was brought up, throughout the night. It was just so well planned, so well executed from start to finish, from the jokes to the content to the people that he had in the gallery. It was touching. It was heartwarming. And I tell you, the Democrats came off looking very, very, very bad. No question. Weak.
And I'll give you an example. They were hoping to mock and to ridicule and to Trump by that one clown being removed. What's his name from Texas?
Representative Al Green. I had to make sure it wasn't the singer. The singer named Al Green.
No, so Al Green got removed, and at first, you thought they might be able to heckle Trump and kind of get away with certain. In Mike Johnson's defense, he did lay down the gavel good and said, listen, I'm going to give you a warning. And they kept it up, and then he just ejected somebody, showing them they were serious. So this whole effort to mock and upset Trump's momentum spectacularly failed, James.
Yeah, I wonder if they had that planned out as a contingency, or if that was spur of the moment. Because Mike Johnson is not the most manly of men, but he took action, and he was bold, and he was strong, and he was forceful, and he spoke with a clear and intense voice, and he had these people removed. I don't know if they expected that they would have to do that, or if that was something that just organically happened as a response. But it was it was a stirring moment.
It was spectacular, though, and it went off without a hitch, and it shut down the opposition in very meaningful ways. 1 hour in the can. Second hour, we're going to talk about this more because I've only covered 3 of my top issues. We got a bunch more. We'll talk about them. We'll do it. James Edwards has a lot of notes as well. You think, man, you guys are just an always Trumper group. No, I'm not. I'm just honest and fair. And when I see good happening, I'm going to acknowledge it. When I see concern, I bring it up. And the concern is that the American people and Congress are wanting Trump to do all the work. It's not fair or right. You got to double down and join your president. Hang tight. Hour 1 of the can. Hour 2 coming up with James Edwards. God save the Republic.